Hello and welcome back to Now Read This, the story of King Arthur and his knights, written and illustrated by Howard Pyle. Part 3, Chapter 2nd, How King Rience Came to Cameliard, and How King Arthur Fought with the Duke of North Umber. Now upon a certain day at this time, there came a messenger to the court of King Leodegrance, with news that King Rience of North Wales and Duke Mordaunt of North Umber were coming thither, and that they brought with them a very noble and considerable court of knights and lords. At this news, King Leodegrance was much troubled in spirit, for he wist not what such a visit might betoken, and yet he greatly feared that it boded ill for him. So on that day, when King Rience and the Duke of North Umber appeared before the castle, King Leodegrance went forth to greet them, and they three met together in the meadows that lie beneath the castle walls of Cameliard. There King Leodegrance bade those others welcome in such manner as was fitting, desiring them that they should come into the castle with him, so that he might entertain them according to their degree. But to this courtesy upon the part of King Leodegrance, King Rience deigned no pleasing reply.
"Nay," quoth he, "we go not with thee into thy castle, King Leodegrance, until we learn whether thou art our friend or our enemy. For just now we are certes no such good friends with thee that we care to sit down at thy table and eat of thy salt. Nor may we be aught but enemies of thine until thou hast first satisfied our demands, to wit, that thou givest to me these lands which I demand of thee, and that thou givest unto my cousin, Duke Mordaunt of North Umber, the Lady Guinevere to be his wife. In these matters thou hast it in thy power to make us either thy friends or thy enemies. Wherefore we shall abide here, outside of thy castle, for 5 days, in the which time thou mayst frame thine answer, and so we may know whether we shall be friends or enemies."
"And in the meantime," quoth Duke Mordaunt of North Umber, "I do hold myself ready for to contest my right unto the hand of the Lady Guinevere with any knight of thy court who hath a mind to deny me just title thereto, and if thou hast no knight in all thy court who can successfully essay a bout of arms with me, thou thyself canst hardly hope to succeed in defending thyself against that great army of knights whom King Rience hath gathered together to bring against thee, in case thou deniest us that which we ask." Then was King Leodegrance exceedingly cast down in his spirits, for he feared those proud lords, and he wist not what to say in answer to them. Wherefore he turned and walked back into his castle again, beset with great anxiety and sorrow of spirit. And King Rience and Duke Mordaunt and their court of lords and knights pitched their pavilions in those meadows over against the castle, so that the plain was entirely covered with those pavilions. And there they took up their inn with great rejoicing and with the sound of feasting and singing and merrymaking, for it was an exceeding noble court King Rience had gathered about him. And when the next morning had come, Duke Mordaunt of North Umber went forth clad all in armour of proof, and he rode up and down the field before the castle, and gave great challenge to those within, daring any knight to come forth for to meet him in knightly encounter. "Ho!" he cried, "how now, ye knights of Cameliard? Is there no one to come forth to meet me? How then may ye hope to contend with the knights of North Wales, and ye fear to meet with one single knight from North Umber?" So he scoffed at them in his pride, and none dared to come forth from Cameliard against him. For the Duke of North Umber was one of the most famous knights of his day, and one of exceeding strength and success at arms, and there was now, in these times of peace, no one of King Leodegrance's court who was at all able to face a warrior of his approved skill and valour. Wherefore no one took up that challenge which the Duke of North Umber gave to the court of Cameliard. Meantime, many people gathered upon the walls of Cameliard, and gazed down therefrom upon that proud and haughty duke, all bedight in his splendid armour, and all were grieved and ashamed that there was no one in that peaceful town to go out against him. And all the lords and knights of King Rience's court came and stood in front of the king's pavilion, and laughed and clapped their hands together, and cheered Duke Mordaunt as he rode up and down before them. And the greater they were expanded with mirth, the more abashed were the people of Cameliard.
"Ho, ho!" cried that proud duke. "How now? Will no one come forth to meet me? How then may ye of Cameliard hope to face the King of North Wales, and all his knightly array, of which I am but one man?"
And the people of Cameliard gathered upon the walls, listened to him with shame and sorrow. Now all this while King Arthur digged in the garden, but nevertheless he was well aware of everything that passed, and of how that the Duke of Northumber rode up and down so proudly before the castle walls. So of a sudden it came to him that he could not abide this any longer. Wherefore he laid aside his spade, and went out secretly by a postern way, and so up into the town. Now there was in Cameliard an exceedingly rich merchant, by name Ralph of Cardiff, and the renown of his possessions and his high estate had reached even unto King Arthur's ears at Carlion. Accordingly, it was unto his house that King Arthur directed his steps. And while he was in a narrow way, not far from the merchant's house, he took off his magic cap of disguise, and assumed somewhat of his noble appearance once more, for he was now of a mind to show his knightliness unto those who looked upon him. Accordingly, when he stood before the rich merchant in his closet, and when the merchant looked up into his face, he wist not what to think to behold so noble a lord, clad all in frieze. For though King Arthur was a stranger to the good man, so that he knew not his countenance, yet that merchant wist that he was no ordinary knight, but that he must assuredly be one of high degree and in authority, even though he was clad in frieze. Then King Arthur opened the breast of his jerkin, and showed the merchant the gold collar that hung around his neck. And also he showed beneath the rough coat of frieze how that there was an undergarment of fine purple silk, embroidered with gold. And then he showed to the good man his own signet ring, and when the merchant saw it, he knew it to be the ring of the King of Britain. Wherefore, beholding these tokens of high and lordly authority, the merchant arose and stood before the king, and doffed his cap. "Sir merchant," quoth the king, "know that I am a stranger knight in disguise in this place. Nevertheless, I may tell thee that I am very good friend to King Leodegrance, and wish him exceeding well. Thou art surely aware of how the Duke of Northumber rides continually up and down before the king's castle, and challenges any one within to come forth for to fight against him in behalf of the Lady Guinevere. Now I am of a mind to essay that combat mine own self, and I hope a very great deal that I shall succeed in upholding the honour of Cameliard, and of bringing shame upon its enemies. Sir merchant, I know very well that thou hast several suits of noble armour in thy treasury, for the fame of them hath reached unto mine ears, though I dwell a considerable distance from this place. Wherefore, I desire that thou shalt provide me in the best manner that thou art able to do, so that I may straightway essay a bout of arms with that Duke of Northumber. Moreover, I do pledge thee my knightly word that thou shalt be fully recompensed for the best suit of armour that thou canst let me have, and that in a very little while."
"My lord," said Master Ralph, "I perceive that thou art no ordinary errant knight, but rather someone of extraordinary estate, wherefore it is a very great pleasure to fulfil all thy behests. But even an thou wert other than thou art, I would be altogether willing to equip thee with armour, seeing that thou hast a mind to ride forth against yonder duke."
Upon this he rang a little silver bell that stood nigh to him, and in answer to its sound several attendants immediately appeared. Into their hands he entrusted the person of the king, bidding them to do him extraordinary honour. Accordingly, certain of these attendants prepared for the king a bath of tepid water perfumed with ambergris, very grateful to the person. And after he was bathed in this bath, he was wiped with soft linen towels. Other attendants conducted him to a hall, all hung with tapestries and broideries, and at this place a noble feast had been spread ready for his refreshment. Here that lordly merchant himself ministered to the king's wants, serving him with various meats, very dainty, and of several sorts, and likewise with fine white bread. And he poured him wine of various countries, some as red as ruby, others as yellow as gold, and indeed the king had hardly ever enjoyed a better feast than that which the merchant Ralph of Cardiff had spread before him. And after he had entirely refreshed himself with eating, there came 6 pages richly clad in sarcenet of azure, and these, taking the king to an apartment of great estate, there they clad him in a suit of Spanish armour, very cunningly wrought, and all inlaid with gold, and the like of that armour was hardly to be found in all of the land. The juppon and the several trappings of the armour were all of satin and as white as milk, and the shield was white, and altogether without emblazonment or device of any sort. Then these attendants conducted the king into the courtyard, and there stood a noble war horse, as white as milk, and all the trappings of the horse were of milk-white cloth, without emblazonment or adornment of any sort, and the bridle and the bridle rein were all studded over with bosses of silver. Then, after the attendants had aided King Arthur to mount his steed, the lordly merchant came forward and gave him many words of good cheer, and so the king bade him adieu, and rode away, all shining in white and glittering in fine armour, wherefore he resembled the full moon in harvest season. And as he drave down the stony streets of the town, the people turned and gazed after him, for he made a very noble appearance as he passed along the narrow way between the houses of the town. So King Arthur directed his way to the postern gate of the castle, and having reached that place, he dismounted and tied his horse. Then he straightway entered the garden, and there, finding an attendant, he made demand that he should have present speech with the Lady Guinevere. So the attendant, all amazed at his lordly presence, went and delivered the message, and by the Lady Guinevere came, much wondering, and passed along a gallery with several of her damsels, until she had come over above where King Arthur was. And when King Arthur looked up and saw her above him, he loved her exceeding well. And he said to her, Lady, I have great will to do thee such honour as I am able, for I go forth now to do combat with that Duke of Northumber, who rides up and down before this castle. Moreover, I hope and verily believe that I shall encompass his downfall. Accordingly, I do beseech of thee some token, such as a lady may give unto a knight, for to wear when that knight rides forth to do her honour. Then the Lady Guinevere said, Certes, Sir Knight, I would that I knew who thou art, yet though I know not, nevertheless I am altogether willing for to take thee for my champion, as thou offerest. So touching that token thou speakest of, if thou wilt tell me of what thing it is that thou desirest, I will gladly give it to thee. And that be so, lady, said King Arthur. I would fain have that necklace that thou wearest about thy throat, for me seems that if I had that tied about my arm, I would find my valour greatly increased thereby. Pardie, Sir Knight, said the lady, what thou desirest of me thou shalt assuredly have. Thereupon speaking, she took from her long, smooth neck the necklace of pearls which she wore, and dropped the same down to King Arthur where he stood. And King Arthur took the necklace and tied it about his arm, and he gave great thanks for it. Then he saluted the Lady Guinevere with very knightly grace, and she saluted him, and then straightway he went forth from that place, greatly expanded with joy that the Lady Guinevere had shown him such favour. Now the report had gone about Cameliard that a knight was to go forth to fight the Duke of Northumber. Wherefore great crowds gathered upon the walls, and King Leodegrance and the Lady Guinevere and all the court of the king came to that part of the castle walls overlooking the meadow where the Duke of Northumber defended. Wherefore so great a concourse was presently assembled that any knight might be encouraged to do his utmost before such a multitude as that which looked down upon the field. Then of a sudden the portcullis of the castle was lifted, and the bridge let fall, and the white champion rode forth to that encounter which he had undertaken. And as he drave across that narrow bridge, the hoofs of his war horse smote the boards with a noise like to thunder, and when he came out into the sunlight, lo, his armour flamed of a sudden like unto lightning, and when the people saw him, they shouted aloud. Then when the Duke of Northumber beheld the knight, all clad in white, he rode straightway to him, and spoke to him with words of knightly greeting. Messire, he said, I perceive that thou bearest no crest upon thy helm, nor hast thou a device of any sort upon thy shield.
wherefore I know not who thou art. Nevertheless, I do believe that thou art a knight of good quality and of approved courage, or else thou wouldst not have thus come to this place.
Certes, Sir Knight, said King Arthur, I am of a quality equal to thine own, and as for my courage, I do believe that it hath been approved in as many encounters even as thine own hath been.
Sir Knight, quoth the Duke of Umber, thou speakest with a very large spirit. Nevertheless, thou mayst make such prayers as thou art able, for I shall now presently so cast thee down from thy seat, so that thou shalt never rise again, for so have I served better men than ever thou mayst hope to be.
To this King Arthur made answer with great calmness of demeanour, That shall be according to the will of heaven, Sir Knight, and not according to thy will. Based. So each knight saluted the other, and rode to his assigned station, and there each dressed his spear and his shield, and made him ready for the encounter. Then a silence fell upon all so great that a man might hear his own heart beat in the stillness. So for a small space each knight sat like a statue made of iron. Then, of a sudden, each shouted to his war horse, and drave spurs into his flank, and launched forward from his station. And so they met in the midst of the course with a noise like unto a violent thunder clap, and lo, the spear of the Duke of North Umber burst into splinters unto the very truncheon thereof, but the spear of King Arthur broke not, but held, so that the Duke was cast out of his saddle like a windmill, whirling in the air and smiting the earth, so that the ground shuddered beneath him. And indeed he rolled full 3 times over, and over, ere he ceased to fall. Then all the people upon the walls shouted with might and main, so that the noise thereof was altogether astonishing, for they had hardly hoped that their champion should have proved so extraordinarily strong and skilful. Meanwhile, those of King Ryan's court ran immediately to the Duke of Umber, where he lay upon the earth, and they straightway unlaced his helm, for to give him air. And first they thought that he was dead, and then they thought that he was like to die, for behold, he lay without any life or motion. Nor did he recover from that swoon wherein he lay, for the space of full 2 hours and more. Now whilst the attendants were thus busied about Duke Mordaunt of North Umber, King Arthur sat his horse very quietly, observing all that they did. Then perceiving that his enemy was not dead, he turned him about and rode away from that place. Nor did he return unto Cameliard at that time, for he deemed that he had not yet entirely done with these enemies to the peace of his realm. Wherefore he was minded not yet to return the horse and the armour to the merchant, but to keep them for a while for another occasion. So he bethought him of how, coming to Cameliard, he had passed through an arm of the forest where certain wood choppers were at work felling the trees. Wherefore, remembering that place, he thought that he would betake him thither and leave his horse and armour in the care of those rude folk until he would need those things once more. So now he rode away into the countryside, leaving behind him the town and the castle and all the noise of shouting and rejoicing. Nor did he once so much as turn his head to look back toward the place where he had so violently overthrown his enemy. And now you shall presently hear of certain pleasant adventures of a very joyous sort that befell him ere he had accomplished all his purposes. For when a man is a king among men, as was King Arthur, then is he of such a calm and equal temper that neither victory nor defeat may cause him to become either unduly exalted in his own opinion or so troubled in spirit as to be altogether cast down into despair. So if you would become like to King Arthur, then you shall take all your triumphs as he took this victory, for you will not be turned aside from your final purposes by the great applause that many men may give you, but you will first finish your work that you have set yourself to perform, ere you give yourself ease to sit you down and to enjoy the fruits of your victory. Yea, he who is a true king of men will not say to himself, Lo, I am worthy to be crowned with laurels, but rather will he say to himself, What more is there that I may do to make the world better because of my endeavours? Wow. What a quote.
Hey, you want to buy something?
you can check the description for my books and audiobooks. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content.